Making simple repairs to your equipment can save you a great deal of money in addition to expanding your skill set. Welcome back to Survival Existence. My tractor decided to not run a while back, and I've just now taken the time to get a tune-up kit to work on it. I really think the capacitor in it, or the condenser as it's quite often called, has went bad in the firing system. But I'm going to find out. In the process, I'm going to go ahead and replace the distributor cap, plugs, plug wires, points, and the condenser. The parts on the distributor is, of course, your plug wires. There's 4 of them with 4 plugs. Your distributor cap, your points, your condenser. This is just simply a cover, and this is your rotor button or your rotor. I'm going to bump the engine around to where this lobe is right in on the points and have them opened all the way so that I'll be able to set my points, because there is a particular distance they're supposed to be between the contacts on the points. Long ago, when I was a child, I didn't have feelers gauge and various measurement instruments like that, and just as a stopgap I would use the matchbook, the cover on a matchbook. The depth of it, the thickness of it, would at least get the engine running until I could get a hold of a feelers gauge and get them set properly. Okay, that should be on the top of that lobe. Okay, let's see if what I believe to be the actual problem this distributor is, namely the condenser. I'm going to remove the bracket from this condenser by this screw, then remove its connecting wires from the points. Alright, now that I've got the new set of points in and the condenser, I'm going to go ahead and check it out. While I had the distributor apart, I also had to replace the link that goes between the outside of the distributor from the coil and to the points. It broke when I was taking the condenser connector off of it, which isn't all that uncommon. I just simply made a new one out of a piece of copper strap that was on the old points. I have went ahead and replaced the coil, which often goes bad on these tractors because they're so close to the engine. They are subjected to a lot of heat, so I went ahead and changed it while I was at it. And it's not that expensive, and I'd rather go ahead and change it. Let's go ahead and try to start it and see if it'll start all right. Make sure the tractor's in neutral. Turn the key on and give it a start. Needless to say, the tractor is running, and it wasn't running at all before. While I had it down and working on the firing system of it, I went ahead and rebuilt the carburetor because it was evidently been a long time since it had been rebuilt. Needless to say, the tractor is running. I'm going to have to make a few more adjustments on the carburetor and also on the points to get it exactly firing properly. But obviously, that's what was wrong with it, as I certainly suspected was the condenser that went bad. Well, my tractor's running now, and I'm going to go ahead and change out the distributor cap and the wires. The offender, come to find out, like I had thought it was this little capacitor, or condenser as mechanics call it, and that was the offender. Okay, in order to change out the rotor, or excuse me, the distributor cap and the wires, I've already changed the rotor out when I changed the points out, but in order to change the distributor cap and the wires, you need to know your firing order and the way your numbers or cylinders are counted. In this case, on this particular type Ford tractor, they're numbered from the rear to the front, 1 through 4. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you'll look at your cap, usually the cap is marked with number 1, which in this case is marked right here. This is number 1. It comes back to number 1 cylinder. Okay, the firing order on this particular tractor is 1, 2, 4, 3. So as you go around the cap clockwise, this should go to 1, this should come to 2, this should come to 3, this should come to 4. But the way they're numbered is 1, 2, 4, and 3. As you can see, this is 1, the second one goes to 2, the third one goes to 4, and the fourth one goes to 3. And they have to be wired back the exact same way, or your tractor will not run, obviously. While I'm in here, I will go ahead and set the gap on the points. Since I can't seem to find my blade type feelers gauge, I'm going to use a wire type on it, and it'll certainly get it well enough close that it'll set and run properly. According to the spec sheet on this particular model of tractor, Ford 600 series, the point should be set with a gap between 0.024 thousandths and 0.026 thousandths. So I'll set them in the neighborhood of 0.025. These points have 2 screws in them, and you have to loosen them both up in order to move your points properly. And quite often, just like this particular tractor, there's a notch cut in the points and a notch in this plate, and you can actually use an additional screwdriver to adjust your points to where you need them. Before you set your points, you have to make sure that this little rider that's on your points is set at the peak of any one of these 4 lobes around your shaft. Obviously, you'll have to bump your engine over to get it up on the highest point. So I'll make sure this tractor's in neutral, and with this particular tractor, the engine will turn over with the starter without the ignition being on, because it's on a separate button, the way it's designed. So there was no way to start it with it in gear. I'll make sure it's in neutral. I know the ignition's off because I cut it off, and I'll see if I can't bump it around to the high point of one of these lobes. And that's right at a high point of the lobe. I had just adjusted these points when I installed them, just by sight, a guesstimation, so to speak. But this particular wire right here is 25 thousandths, so I'll see if it's in the neighborhood. They look like they're too closed where I am right here. And they are way too closed. So I'll open these points up and we'll adjust them. And I'm just going to loosen these screws just enough to where I can actually move the points, because once you tighten the screws down, you'll have to check them again, because quite often they move after that point. It feels like it's pretty close right there, so I'm trying to hold everything steady while I tighten these screws back down. As soon as I get it tightened down, I'll check it again at the feelers gauge. See where we're at here. And it feels like it's right at 25. And I can tell by looking at the points, they're starting to get burnt, and they're a brand new set of points, so I in fact did have them entirely too closed. But now that we have the point set and tightened back down, it's time to reassemble the rest of the firing system, which of course is the distributor cap and new plug wires. We'll see exactly where we are from there. This is the new distributor cap and the plug wires. So, starting with the distributor cap, we'll take it out of its packaging and start reassembling the system. You can see right here, this distributor cap has a number. It's the number 1. That's your number 1 cylinder. That's the way it'll sit on there, and it'll sit this way. Number 1 is this first plug all the way to the back of the tractor, and it takes the longest cable, so I'll choose the longest spark plug wire and put it in the number 1 position. And also notice these plugs have 2 different ends. The curled end always goes to the plug, and the shorter cap end goes to your distributor cap. Some plug wires have a long connector right here, but it'll always be different. The longer, bigger one always goes to your plugs, and the shorter one, like this, always goes to your distributor cap. Now we're looking for the second longest wire. And measuring these, I see that it's this one. It goes in the number 2 position. And if you'll remember, I said our firing order was 1, 2, 4, 3. And since this is 1, this is 2, this will be 4, and this will be 3. So the 4th plug wire going to the very front spark plug goes there, and there shouldn't be a lot of difference between the length, but if there is, I'll put the very shortest one in this particular position to the number 4 position, and there is a slight difference. So I'll put it in the 4th place and put it in the cap. Get this cap slid all the way down, get as tight of a weather-tight seal as possible on these plug wires. And the last connector is your distributor cap to your coil. This cover has an arrow on it that says align with oiler, and this right here is the oiler down on the side of your distributor. This particular distributor model has an oiler on it. You put a little bit of oil every once in a while, just a few drops, in order to lubricate the shaft. Also, this cap has a gasket, and I've already placed it on here. If you'll notice, this cap has notches in it. It corresponds to this place right here and the screws in order for it to set down properly. And you have to look at it real close to make sure that it sets down where it goes. Then remembering, this cap will go on either this way or that way because of these little latch fittings for these. There's one on the back side and one on the front side. Remembering that number 1 is marked and is out this way, we know that this particular plug wire should be pointed out this way and this latch go in here. Make sure it seats the way it's supposed to. You'll feel it lock in. It can't move any further. It has notches that it rides in also. But I'll place this first one in its proper place. It's snapped into place, and this one will snap into place. Make sure it's seated and exactly where it belongs. Now I'm going to take a ratchet and a plug socket to take these plugs out and at least gap them if they're still in good shape. If not, I'll replace them. A plug socket is a deep well socket, but it usually also has a piece of rubber or foam up on the inside to grab a spark plug whenever you go to pull it out when you removed it from the cylinder, in order so it'll hold on to it. On a tractor like this, it's really not that big of a deal because doesn't have any place to go, so you can't pick it up. But you have to be careful whenever you take spark plugs out and keep your ratchet head straight with it. If you jack over to one side or the other, up and down or wherever, you are subject to break it. Therefore, you have to do it very carefully whenever you take them out and put them in. And whenever you put them in, you don't over tighten. And this one was not over tightened at all. It was up about right for a gasketed type spark plug. This is a spark plug. Looks like it's in reasonably good shape. All said and done, it's got a little carbon buildup on it, but this tractor was running rough before it completely stopped. But the gap looks pretty close. I'll see, and I'll check it after I clean it. I'm going to go ahead and replace these plugs. I have a new set that I bought when I bought tune-up kit for this tractor. I'll gap them and then I'll put them in each cylinder. And even though I'm going to take these plugs out, I will still save them just in case I have one that gets messed up, just as a stopgap measure, so I can keep on working. If I'm working, when one does either get fouled out, and I'll just be able to keep on working until I can get a replacement. Well, as I go forward, they're looking worse and worse. That one's pretty bad fouled. Still functioning, obviously, but nonetheless, it's fouled out seriously bad. That one's in pretty good shape. Judging from the appearance of the plugs themselves, for some reason, this number 3 cylinder is getting a lot more carbon, and potentially the rings may be more wore out in that particular cylinder. The plugs in this tractor are supposed to gap at 25 to 28 thousandths, which is 0.025 to 0.028. So I will probably set them somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.026. Now I will take these plugs out. These come in a set of 4. There's 4 of them. Take each one out of the box. And some of these plugs often come pre-gauged from the factory. Some do not, but even if they're supposed to be gauged from the factory, always check them. This one is too closed. So I'm going to take the little tool on the other end of this and slightly open it up. Since my feelers gauge right here has a 0.035 and a 0.040, I'll use it as a go, no-go. So that means that it should not go in there and this should go. Okay, and that's good enough. This 35 thousandths goes easily and the 40 thousandths won't go at all. So I know that particular plug is right, and I'll set it to the side until I get all 4 gauged properly. Okay, I'm going to insert each one of these plugs, being careful to not bump the bottom of the plug, because it will change the gap very easily. And that you do not want to do. If you do accidentally bump it on something, drop it, just check it again, reset it if necessary. Whenever you put these plugs in, you just simply put them in hand tight. Make sure the gasket on this particular plug is seated all the way down. Not all plugs have gaskets, but this particular model of head requires a plug with gaskets in it. And once I get them hand tight, I'll put my ratchet back on, and I will set these in keeping, again, your ratchet head in line with your plug. Pull this down and seat that plug. I see gasket type plugs 1/4 turn, just like that. And I'll go throughout all of this and do them completely the same way. You don't want to over tighten them because it'll be a lot more trouble getting them out, and if you have trouble getting your plugs out, I'd suggest putting some anti-seize grease on them. It goes a long way to being easy, making it easier to get them out. But if you don't normally have that problem, you don't have to worry with it. While this tractor's been down, I've also rebuilt the carburetor, and I'm not sure if it's adjusted right or not. I have preliminary adjustments made on it, but now that I've replaced all the regularly replaceable, the tune-up parts of the firing system, the distributor cap, wires, plugs, points, condenser, so on, I will start it and see exactly if it's running right or not. Right now we're going to rewire up the firing system. This center wire goes to your coil. I'm going to get it set in. Okay, our firing order went 1, 2, 4, 3. So we know this is number 1 because the cap is marked there. So we'll take number 1 and put it on number 1 plug, making sure the boot seats all the way down. We'll take number 2 plug wire, see if I can route it so it doesn't cross arc, reduces the chance. We'll put it on top number 2, and our firing order was 1, 2, 4, and 3, so we need the 4th position wire, which is this one. We'll put it on the 3rd plug, make sure it goes home, and of course the 3rd position goes on 4. Obviously the tractor is running like it's supposed to. It's actually a little bit smoother than it was before I replaced the distributor cap, the plugs, and the plug wires. So evidently it's needed, but I'll still, like I said before, hold on to them just in case one of them either gets tore up, or I suspect one or the other is bad and I can replace it, actually find out. You can save a great deal of money by doing this work yourself. There are still quite a few of the older people around who can work on these engines and grew up working on these when there was only this type of engine and firing system to work on. You can buy a replacement firing system for these and use the electronic type ignitions, but why bother? I don't use a tractor often enough to make it worth my while to do that, and I like the way the old equipment works, and it's a lot more stable as far as any kind of concern about EMP or CME destroying, you know, anything like the electronic items inside the firing system, you know, such as transistors and components like that are easily destroyed. Getting too close to them with a transmitting high-powered radio, as a matter of fact, can destroy them. These old pieces of farm equipment were designed for small homesteads, and as a consequence, they work out very well. You can save a lot of money by doing stuff like this yourself. They're not that complicated once you take the time to immerse yourself in the way they operate. It's just not that complicated, although occasionally you can come up with some issues that you do need professional help with. It doesn't often happen with these older pieces of equipment. Learn a new skill by working on the small engines and farm equipment on your homestead. This has been Bobby with Survival Existence, helping you help yourself. Come visit us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Survival Existence, and visit us at our website at survivalexistence.com. Have a good day.